All right, guys, what's going on? So today we are going to be talking about interest groups. So I posted this slideshow on Canvas in the modules so you can follow along. It's pretty long, so I'm going to focus on the most important parts. And yeah, so yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing about interest groups. So when people say interest groups, they're sometimes referring to lobbyists, or they might call interest groups lobbies. Essentially, interest groups are the groups of people that want something done in politics, and they generally hire lobbyists, right? So that's when we think of lobbying. Yes, it's a part of interest groups, but it's only one component of it. Um, but the reason why I want to start with that is because, so lobbying, at least in my view, is it can be compared to like something like in a crime movie. Like when you think of a lobbyist, what do you think of? I think of like someone that comes in with a really nice suit. They drive a nice car, and they probably have like a Bluetooth headset on. And they're probably really, really busy, not busy enough for you, but if if you manage to or if they start to think that you're important, they will, find the time to be whispering in your ear, stuff like that. People say that, to be a lobbyist, you have to have like moral flexibility. Like, it doesn't matter what the truth is, it just matters what like your lobbying firm wants you to do, stuff like that, right? So we can kind of think about it like, we do in crime movies. It's corruption, this, that, and the other. And I don't know about for you guys, but I make the connection between crime movies and lobbying in the way that it's like, we know that lobbying is can be bad, it can lead to corruption, but at the same time, like, at least me, I find it fascinating. Same way people probably find like like mafia movies fascinating. So, you know, on the one hand, you could think of lobbying like that. You could think of it in that very idealized, kind of picturesque way. And when I say that, I don't mean picturesque in like a good way, but like it would be in a motion picture, like the idea of like this rampant corruption, right? You could think of it that way. Or you can think of it more clinically, because as you'll see as we go through the PowerPoint, interest groups slash lobbying is a part of politics. It's an aspect of free speech. It's an aspect of liberty. Um, so we could think of it in its worst terms, or we could try to think of it more clinically and just try to understand what it is lobbying and interest groups actually are. And then from there, you can make your own judgment as far as, is it good or bad? Is it necessary? Is it worth it? You know, do you want to become a lobbyist? Things like that. You can make those decisions for yourself. So let's briefly just define what interest groups are. So now we're talking about interest groups, not necessarily lobbying, but as you'll see, we'll go back and forth. Interest groups are referred to as lobbies or special interest groups. So interest groups are organized, and they are established to influence the government's programs and policies at the national, state, and local levels in a variety of policy areas. So, there are environmental interest groups, there are labor interest groups, there are gun rights interest groups, there are, pro life or pro choice interest groups. Basically, when it comes to politics, all an interest group is any group of people that are organized to some extent and have a common interest that they are trying to pursue. They're trying to take a common or an issue that they all agree on or view as an issue and trying to amplify that issue to such a point that it gets a politician's attention, essentially. Now, interest groups are also often confused with PACs. PACs are political action committees. PACs are the money giving arm of interest groups. So, interest groups form PACs, but PACs are the organizations that actually go about like donating to candidates and political parties and things like that. So, yeah. Okay, and then the last thing on this slide that I want to talk about, interest groups and political parties are fairly similar in the sense that they're both a linkage institution and they're both concerned with taking, a citizen's interest and funneling it towards something. So with parties, they would funnel that towards this is the candidate you ought to vote for. For an interest group, it would be these are the policies you ought to pursue. And that's why lobbyists go to Washington and try to, lend their expertise or their knowledge about a bill or try to convince a politician to vote one way or the other on a bill. So, yeah. Okay, so this next slide, this kind of goes back to that original question, is lobbying good or bad? Is it like the movies? Is it not? So, this table that I'm looking at essentially comes from a paper, and I will send you the PDF of the paper if you want it. But essentially, they were looking at how does money, like how does lobbying affect actual like bills and laws. So in this paper, they were looking at how much PAC donations, so the money giving arm of the interest groups, how much of those donations had an effect on participation of a lawmaker in a bill. So the idea is if money buys votes or if money buys influence, the more donations, the more likely that person would be to vote on that bill or to participate in that bill. So what this regression analysis says, I'll just make it as simple as possible. These asterisks, if you have an asterisk, it means it's statistically significant. So this is statistically significant at the 0.05 level, which means there's a 95% chance that if you did that, if you ran the same test again, you would get the same outcome. So essentially 95%, confidence interval is very high. So that meets the threshold of being scientific or being statistically significant. But essentially what this means, these are your independent variables. So the number of PAC contributions to supporters, it has this much of an effect, 0.26. I don't know what that unit is. That doesn't really matter. The point is the proportions and the direction. So yes, PAC contributions do have an effect on how politicians or whether a politician will participate in a bill. Essentially, what that means is to sign on to it, to say, yeah, we support it. We'll also put our name on the bill. So yes, it does have an effect. Money does buy influence. However, the number of dairy cows in the district also has pretty much the exact same effect, right? What has the most effect is whether that person is in a committee or a subcommittee leadership position, right? So essentially, the question, does money buy influence? It's like, yes, it does, according to the table, but so do dairy cows to the exact same degree. And furthermore, the thing that would predict whether or not somebody participates in a bill, the thing that offers the most prediction is just whether or not that person is in a leadership position. It would look good for that person in the leadership position to co-sign that bill or to participate in that bill. They don't want the prestige to go to somebody else, right? So yes, lobbying does have an effect, but it is not the only thing that has an effect. And this is why I say you could just think about it clinically and just be like, yeah, this is just what it is. Yes, it has an effect, but doesn't always, right? So anyway, back to the original lecture, but that's I wanted to throw that in to show you guys how interest groups can be measured and how you can see their effects. So yeah. All right, so let's talk about the character of interest groups. So the founders believed that interest groups thrived because of liberty. They would say that if government put restrictions on organized interest, so if government put restrictions on groups of people from organizing and, you know, sharing their voice or amplifying their voice, it would be tyranny to not let them do that. Um, so in its purest form, interest groups are actually a good thing. They're actually an aspect of liberty, or they are inseparable from liberty. Additionally, James Madison viewed it as a good thing, as a way of essentially providing checks and balances in another realm of politics, in this realm specifically. So James Madison always talked about the mischief of factions, the tyranny of the majority. You have these groups of people that will, push through their agenda at the expense of others. This is what he meant when he said the mischief of factions. So his idea, and this is the idea of pluralism, instead of trying to get rid of factions, you have more factions. The more factions you have, the more they will even each other out. So an example would be, you know, let's take abortion. So you've got pro-life groups and then you've got pro-choice groups. Nobody is, I would say that most people are probably not neutral on the subject, but what you get is people that are adamantly opposed and people that are adamantly for, and then what you get is somewhere in the middle. What our policy is truly somewhere in the middle. Abortion is not completely legal, nor is it completely illegal, right? I'm not going to try to talk about Roe v. Wade right now, but essentially it's like neither. There are restrictions, and abortion is legal in some cases and illegal in some cases, right? So that would be an example of how pluralism could lead to two factions just canceling each other out. Not canceling each other out, but balancing each other out. So, according to Madison, pluralism / interest group / lobbying is a good thing and is part of liberty. Okay, so now let's talk about what interest groups do and how they do it. So I've already alluded to it. The point of an interest group is to influence government officials to see things their way, essentially. But the way they do that, the way they gain influence over politicians, is by appealing to their members' ideologies. Like the NRA, the National Rifle Association, is going to have an easier job lobbying to conservatives because they share the same ideology, right? In addition, it could be through the money they raise, providing information to politicians, and more importantly, maintaining credibility through providing solid information. So if an interest group consistently provides bad information, they're going to lose credibility and they're not going to be listened to. So they do actually have to provide things in addition to just money, though money is truly a big part of it. So both interest groups and policymakers benefit from this relationship. So policymakers receive information, money, and votes, and interest groups receive policies beneficial to their causes. Essentially, you need a lot of money to campaign. You need a lot of money to win an election. And, unless your appeal is directly to the people and you have just a grassroots base and you have no money or no problem raising money from like small individual donors like you or me, if that's not your constituency, you are going to have to consider getting money from other sources. So that could be through you can get money from the political party, you can get money from interest groups, things like that. So you have to decide how you're going to get the money to fund your election. And not everybody's constituency is grassroots, like Bernie Sanders style, like, the average donation was $27 or whatever he kept saying. Not every politician's constituency, or not every politician has that constituency, if that makes sense. And therefore, you might be more likely to have to listen to an interest group, or you might be more sympathetic to an interest group if they are offering money. Again, is that a good thing? No, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that is the way it is right now. And, well, that's just the way it is. I don't see that changing. So types of interest groups, so we think of like, there are tons of types of interest groups. There are corporate groups like AT&T, Boeing, ExxonMobil, Apple, and then there are also labor groups like the AFL-CIO, the Teamsters. Have you ever heard of the Teamsters? They're a huge labor group. Professional associations like the Bar Association. Citizen or public interest groups like Common Cause. Ideological groups like the Christian Coalition. And then you have public sector groups like the National League of Cities. So there are many different types of interest groups. It's not just one thing. And that leads me to this next point, because interest groups are like, they are a phenomenon that occurs when you have groups of people with a shared interest. And what can happen is that this can lead to what's called a free rider dilemma. So there are some, or the nature of interest groups is that oftentimes if the interest group becomes too successful, they actually have a harder time maintaining support, because as their issue or as their policy, as they become more successful in pursuing their policy, there will be other people in the population that will benefit from that, but will have not put in any work to get it done, right? This is the free rider problem. And this goes back to just people being rational and self-interested. And again, every time I say rational, I do not mean that they are rational and they take every side of the situation and they're reasoned and they make decisions slowly and deliberately. No, I mean rational as in like cost benefit analysis. What's the ratio of positives to negatives? Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? A lot of times, it is in your rational self-interest to not join the interest group and to still reap the benefits. So the best example I can think of is polluted air. Everybody benefits from clean air. And if, an interest group that is going for environmental stuff becomes very successful, I will benefit from that regardless of whether or not I join, because you can't restrict clean air to only your members. You know what I mean? You can't keep clean air from affecting everyone. Another example, a non-political example, but it's a perfect example, and I know you guys are going to know what I'm talking about. Group projects. Like a school project, a group project. I was in school, you're in school, you know how it goes. It's like one or two people will do the assignment, and then everybody else is going to be like, it's fine, it's what it is. I'll take whatever grade we get, That is a free rider problem. And that is something that interest groups have to deal with. So how do interest groups deal with the free rider problem? Essentially, what they do is have to provide what's called selective benefits. So selective benefits are benefits that only those members get. So maybe an environmental group can't keep the rest of the country from enjoying the clean air, but the interest group could provide benefits like newsletters, programs, conferences, special goods or services, friendship, networking, social groups, and then also the purposive benefits, which are just the good feeling you get from like serving a cause or standing up for your beliefs, So like, this may seem like, not that much to, to like, is this sufficient to correct the free rider problem? I mean, it is and it isn't. So, informational benefits are good. Material benefits are good. It could be like you get discounts on, at certain stores, or you get invited to conferences, or you get, you're able to be introduced to special types of people that may have be more connected in some way, you know. So there's like this social aspect to it, there's this economic aspect to it. It's anything to make the person want to continue to be in the interest group. So essentially, the interest group needs to deliver on something, right? So, in over and above just simply achieving the goal they're setting out to do, they also have to make the interest group tempting enough that people will continue to support it. Hopefully, that makes sense. Now, we've talked about it fairly clinically. Now, let's go back a little bit to the first point or the first part. You know, one of the downsides of interest groups is that you will get unequal representation. So one of the so the quote that many political scientists will say is that the flaw in the pluralist heaven is that the heavenly chorus sings with an upper class accent. So going back to pluralism, the idea that all of these groups will fight it out amongst themselves, and what we'll get is just some kind of resolution, and they'll balance each other out. It's like, sure, maybe that's true, but it really only applies to people that have money in the first place. People are more likely to join a group if their income is higher, if they have a higher level of education, or if they work in a professional occupation. So, the working class, there really is no representation for the working class or for the poor. Not enough to balance out the interests of the wealthy class. So that is an issue. And that's why lobbying gets such a bad rap, because when you see effective lobbying, it's normally done by people that have the money to put in those resources. You see what I mean? So yeah. Key components to a successful interest group is good leadership, money. You cannot forget money. Good social media, and competent members. Leadership is vital. Normally, you would need some kind of entrepreneur, like a policy entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs generally refers to business, but it can also just be, you have policy entrepreneurs in politics where they like create this new like paradigm of like how to, govern, So things like that. You do need creative people leading the charge and coming up with interesting ways or new ways to be effective in, lobbying to Congress. Media strategy, everything is media now. Of course, you have to be proficient at marketing, and social media is a part of that. Money, of course. Money is... You need something to grease the wheels, unfortunately. You need something to grease the wheels. And then members, you need both people to join the interest group, like people to pay dues and to go to the meetings and to be like, yeah, I'm a part of this group. And then you also need, qualified staff, people that have worked in politics that kind of know what to do. They know how these organizations work. Maybe they've worked in government themselves. Maybe they just have ties to people in government, things like that. You definitely need people that know what they're doing to be running the stuff, in addition to having a large member base of people that support the group. Cool. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is this website called Open Secrets. Let's see what happens if I do this. So Open Secrets is a fantastic website, and essentially you can look up how much money politicians get and who they get it from, and you can look up interest groups and see how much money they give, and you can type in literally anything, and if any group has contributed to a politician, it will show up. It's fantastic. So come on, Mac. Killing me here. Okay. So this is not like an assignment, but I will provide this as an option for a discussion post. What I want you guys to do is to go pick an interest group, and it can be, anything. The NRA, Planned Parenthood, you could do big oil, big tobacco, like big oil, you could be like ExxonMobil, big pharma could be like Pfizer, labor unions, anything you want. Or you can look at politicians, Cruz, AOC, Trump, Biden, Crenshaw, Cuomo, Harris, Cornyn, Jackson Lee, whoever. It doesn't matter. But what I want you to do is try to answer these questions, at least in your head. And if you want to do this on a discussion post, then answer them for real. How much do some of these notable interest groups contribute to candidates? Are there any trends you notice? Do some industries favor some politicians over others? What you will see is that, yes, there are trends. You can notice them. And I just want you to try to identify them. But before we adjourn this, I want to just quickly show you how you can get the ball rolling on Open Secrets. Just go to menu, or you can just type in anything. Like, literally, you can type in almost anything and you'll find it. For example, NFL. You might be thinking, NFL doesn't lobby. NFL is not an interest group. Well, it actually is. Well, they have a PAC. But then again, interest groups create PACs. So, yes, the NFL does lobby. Okay, so as far as lobbying goes, the NFL did not spend that much. And the irony is that when I say didn't spend that much, 1.3 million is not that much money, but they still spent 1.3 million in 2019 lobbying. Who were they lobbying? Let's see. We'll look at their issues. Okay, radio and TV broadcasting, taxes. Of course, they're going to have, they're going to have something to say about taxes. Homeland Security. I wonder. I have no idea. Maybe. I really have no idea. We can look through that a little bit more. Let's see here. Okay, they spent still about 1.3 mil in 2020. Let's try something else. Let's try a politician. Actually, let me just show you guys this. The amount of money raised by candidates by Joe Biden and Donald Trump together during the 2020 election cycle, $3,977.4 million. That's $4 billion. They raised $4 billion. Just let that sink in. That is wild, right? And that's why I love Open Secrets, just because it shows you. It just shows you. Okay, so maybe this might be for all active candidates. I'm not quite sure. Oh, no. This has got to be, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that adds up to 4 bill, or it comes from these other people as well. But at any rate, there was $4 billion worth of money floating around for the presidential race that we know about. I'm sure there's more money that wasn't reported, So, yeah, I just want to leave y'all kind of with that. But, this is why I love this website, because you can just see everything, or as close to everything as they'll let you see. You know what I mean? But yeah. So that is my lecture on interest groups. I urge you to go through this website if you find it interesting, and I urge you to go through it if you would like to do something like this on your discussion post, because this will be an option. Cool? Cool. Appreciate it.